Please help me give big smooches to my guest, Julia Haart.
Hey, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. So nice to see you, Damona.
I am so happy to have you here because we have so much to talk about. First of all, your show, My Unorthodox Life, fantastic.
Thank
Being
you.
someone who comes from a reality TV background, I was like, this is on its own, it's just a fantastic show. But you are so real and authentic. And I mean, the show opens with you talking to your kids, your daughter and your son-in-law about sex. Like,
Yeah,
is there anything that's off limits for Julia Hart?
absolutely not. I genuinely, I wrote a 400 and some odd page book. I am truly an open book. And I think that as a parent, we want our children to know that they can always get the truth from us so that they don't go looking for it somewhere else.
That is so true. I have a 13-year-old daughter, and we have very open conversations about everything. I tried on some of your shapewear, your Plus Body by Julia Hart shapewear. I
Yeah,
tried it on actually in front of her.
I love it. Good
She was
for
like, "Oh, Mom,
you.
it's very sexy."
Can you imagine the words sexy and shapewear in one sentence? Before Plus
Well,
Body, that did not happen. Shapewear was
yeah.
granny panties. It was ugly and embarrassing. Women hid the fact that they wore it. To have the words shapewear and sexy in one sentence tells you everything you need to know about Plus Body.
Yeah, it is sexy, and I've said this on the show before, but I think that the way that you feel, like, when you are getting ready for the date, I talk a lot about
Mm-hmm.
preparation for a date, and I've even told some of my clients before, like, "Put on a red pair of panties." Like, doesn't matter if he's gonna see it at the end of the night or not, they're there for you so that you feel sexy underneath whatever you're wearing, right?
Exactly. That's the beauty of it, is that we need to feel good about ourselves. We need to feel confident. And I don't think that there's all these articles about what attracts people to one another is confidence, is a sense
Mhm.
of you're getting to see the real person. They're real. They're, honest with who they are. And what is more confidence inducing than feeling beautiful in your own body and feeling great about the way you look?
Yeah, totally. And I do hear from a lot of people also that, there's all different types of bodies that are attractive to all different types of people. And it really it honestly it hurts when I hear from listeners that they feel like, "Oh, I got to lose 10 pounds to feel sexy," or
Yeah, it drives me
I've
crazy.
got to
Ugh.
I can't meet someone if I'm looking like this or dressed like this. And I love that you're in all of your work and all your brands, you're really about empowering people, but specifically women to feel to feel confident in their own bodies, whatever it looks like, you
Yeah.
know?
That's it. Exactly. First of all, I love you. I couldn't have said it better myself. You totally get exactly the vision and the image. And that is what it's about. It's about freeing women from all these insecurities that the universe loves to dump in our laps.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, Julia, that you're coming to this place now knowing where you started out. So, for those who haven't seen My Unorthodox Life or haven't read your book Brazen, you you lived in an ultra-Orthodox community for the majority of your life. And
Correct.
I know a little bit. I grew up reformed in I'm half Jewish, I know. Can't
Oh,
tell.
good.
Can't tell from
Hello,
looking.
member of the tribe.
Member of the tribe. But I'm glad that you said that because they're very different tribes.
Oh, yes.
And and I'm even learning more about the ultra-Orthodox community. I have coached clients who are, modern Orthodox, which,
Completely different.
still it's different,
Completely
but it's
different.
still very different than the way that I grew up. And you've said on the show and in your book, in the Orthodox community, your job as a woman is to be invisible, to not attract attention, which is very different from the way that I coach daters and very different from your message now. Can you talk a little bit about your background and your religious background and how you came to this shift in confidence around your body?
So, my entire life. So I think the simplest way to kind of encapsulate what I lived through there is with three laws. Okay. Law number one is when a man, from the time he's old enough to speak, 2.5, 3 years old, until the day he dies, when he wakes up in the morning, he says a set of prayers. The third prayer that he says is Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam shelo asani isha, which means thank you God for not making me a woman. I heard my son saying that every day, and my husband and my father and everyone else, because a woman was an inferior being. Now, law number two, women aren't allowed to study the Talmud or become rabbis, and they're not required to go to synagogue or learn Gemara. Or a woman's greatness is always through a man. She, in her own right, cannot be great. How does a woman become great in my world? Eshes chayil miyimtza. What does a righteous woman look like? What is a woman of valor? She's the one who plows the fields and cooks the food and has the baby, while her husband sits at the gates and studies with the scholars. And then there's this concept of nashim daitz and kalos, which is that we weren't allowed to study the Talmud or become rabbis. I had an entire bookshelves of books that I wasn't allowed to read. And the last part, of course, is the most, they're all pretty egregious. And that is that there is this concept that women are responsible for men's sins. So a woman can't sing in public or dance in public or speak in public or in any way be forward facing, because a man may look at her and have sexual thoughts about her, and that's on her, not on him. So I grew up being taught that man's behavior is my responsibility, and that the only way to prevent a man from sinning is to disappear myself. And the only way to become a good person is to prevent a man from sinning. So this whole idea that women have to disappear themselves to hide their bodies so that men don't sin is, obviously abysmal, right? So my entire life, I was told that I had to hide my body because my body is an instrument of sin.
Wow. That's a lot for anyone to carry, but especially when you're so young too, and when you're just forming your
That's
thoughts
right.
and your beliefs and your understanding of the world. And I'm sure there are a lot of people listening who may not have grown up in an Orthodox community, household, but I think there's a lot of women who can relate to what you just said. How did you come to this realization after growing up in that world to come to a place of body positivity and empowerment, and and even like being in the fashion industry, where the goal of fashion it's feel good about yourself, but it's also to look good externally, and you came from a background where you were covering yourself every day.
That's why the book is called Brazen from Long Sleeves to Lingerie, because it is
Yeah.
really kind of funny. Most of my life, I'm covered head to toe. The only parts of my body that are uncovered are my face and my hands, right? My hair is covered. I have to wear above my collarbone, nothing above my elbow. So it has to be covering my elbow, below my knees, above my ankles, and the space between your knees and ankles, which is kind of a gray area. My version of Judaism, I wore 2 layers. I first wore stockings and then socks on top. God forbid a piece of leg would show if the stocking would tear. Okay. So my entire body covered head to toe except for my hands and my face. And then I become the creative director of the world's largest lingerie brand. It is kind of funny. But think about it,
Yeah.
but if my entire life, basically, there was this dichotomy between who I was told I had to be and who I was told I am as a person, meaning you're dumber than a man. You're incapable of understanding and grasping deep and esoteric subjects. Your only purpose in life is to have children and be subservient, obedient, and silent.
And you can't work. You can't have your own career.
People work in the community, right? They do OT or PT or high school teachers or nannies or nurses. There's no careers, right? Because you
Yeah.
can't go to a Stanford or a Columbia. You're going to babysit kids, or you're going to be a teacher, or you're going to do one of the OT-PT things that you could do within the community. So women work inside the community, and I would say 99.999% of the time, there are no CEOs, There are no doctors and lawyers. Now, of course, there's always exceptions to that rule, but it's 1 in millions. Okay. And now, of course, when I first came out and said that, people said, oh, she's exaggerating about that community. And now in the last year, as you've seen, there's been a dozen articles about what's really going on in my high school. And one of my friends sent me a letter that she received in 2020. So now we're talking 30 years after I graduated, where they say if your daughter's going into college, she's divorcing herself from Judaism and from the community, and you have to write a letter that she's not going to college and all this stuff. So the reality is women are forced into this role. Your biology defines your destiny. And I had this constant fight in my mind between who I know I am as an individual. I'm not dumber than men. I'm incredibly hardworking. I quick study. I love learning. I'm an intellectual. I've read so many books. I mean, you name it, Euripides, Voltaire, Descartes, Spinoza, Cicero. I have read it. So I was being told that I was stupider, but I certainly didn't feel so. I was being told that my only path to goodness was through a man. But it just didn't make sense to me. But they convinced me that I was somehow internally flawed, that I didn't understand this. But when my daughter, who was 5, asked to play soccer, and my husband told my 5-year-old that she can't play because, of course, you can't wear pants, which means you have to play soccer in a skirt. And if you play soccer in a skirt, you may kick the ball and the skirt will go up and your knees will show. And a man walking by the field may see you and have inappropriate thoughts. Therefore, you can't play soccer. And let's not even talk about what kind of man gets turned on by a 5-year-old's knees. Just leave that alone for a minute.
Right.
Let's not even talk about that. My little 5-year-old daughter looks at my husband and says, okay, well, if I'm responsible for his actions, is he responsible for mine? My 5-year-old. And when she uttered those words, it was like this giant handcuff in my mind was released, because they had convinced me I was somehow internally flawed, that I wasn't okay with this. No one can convince me that my 5-year-old, who I had never voiced these thoughts to, ever, that my 5-year-old's thinking was somehow flawed. And so hearing her say these very simple, practical, logical words gave me permission to say, it's not me, it's the laws, it's that community. And just as you said, Damona, this is a very small group of people within the Orthodox Jewish world. Most people do not live like I do. This has nothing to do with Judaism. And if you look at the rules that surround my life and the rules that surround women in fundamentalist Islam and Mennonites and any kind of extremist version of something, the rules are all the same.
That women don't have a voice.
So it has nothing to do with religion. It has everything to do with fundamentalism, with using religion as an excuse to imprison women and keep them down.
Wow, that is very powerful. And like, it seems like you've taken all of those experiences and used them to fuel you into this new era of your life.
I just don't take freedom for granted. And so I think when I left, and it is time travel. It is genuine time travel. I lived in the 1800s. I was not equipped to handle the 21st century, which is why most people who leave my community, especially women, end up either committing suicide or becoming drug addicts. It's a real problem because they really are not equipped to handle the 21st century. They've never been on a date. They've never been to a bar or a club. They don't have the societal norms. They don't understand how to function within those societal norms. It's truly time travel. I remember the first time when I left, the day that I left, I felt like I was going into Mars. I was walking into a planet that I did not recognize. And it's really frightening. And it's almost impossible. So, I don't take freedom for granted. And once I managed to escape and do that, I said to myself, well, if I can time travel, I can do anything.
Yeah, sometimes you need those experiences to really give you the perspective. I'm really curious how dating was for you after you divorced your first husband, not having like so much of attraction and communication techniques and all the stuff that I teach on the show. So much of it is learned by watching and by being in situations, right? Yeah.
And in high school, like your first love is generally like in high school, you figure this stuff out. Like I remember, so I'll answer your question. Dating, what I never dated. This is the first time in my life. I'm 52 years old. I'm dating because when I first left the community, okay, just I don't want to say it very, directly, but just say it was freedom in every direction, right? So I wanted to experience sexual freedom as well. So I would say the first 9 months, it was not dating. It was just freeing myself and kind of well, let's just say the first person I went out with was a 21-year-old Cirque du Soleil acrobat, and then you can imagine the rest.
Oh my
There we
gosh.
go.
Wow.
So
That's
for the
wild.
first, yeah, so for the first like 9 months, it was more about like self-discovery than dating. I didn't
Yeah.
really date, right?
Yeah, because sex before wasn't really for your pleasure. It was for your husband and procreation.
No, not at all. Sex was terrible. It was like laundry, dentist, homework with the kids, sex. Like it was just like another chore I had to do that was about as pleasant as going to the dentist. I mean, it was awful. And then when I first came out, and I was like, oh, so that's why people like sex, right? So I would say the first 9 months was just an exploration. I wasn't dating. And then I met a guy who became my boyfriend for 6 months. And then right after him, I met my husband. So the first time in my life that I'm actually purposefully and systematically dating, I'm 52 years old. This is the first time in my life I'm dating.
What have you been discovering? And
Oh
we should catch
gosh.
everyone up. Since the show, you and your husband split up. And so now you are single again and ready to mingle. How is it different for you now? And at 52, what are you learning?
So it has been incredibly empowering. You're going to laugh now. You're ready for this. Okay.
I'm so ready.
So when I left the community and I started my business and then, EWG and everything I've done, like I never wrote a book, but I got a bestseller. I never started a show, but it became a successful show. I never ran a company, but I built into $1 billion business, right? Just because I'd never done something, I put my heart and soul in it. I'm a crazy hard worker and I accomplished on the business side. What I realized with this divorce is that as far as I'd come here, when it comes to me as a businesswoman, in my personal life, I was still back in Muncie. I was still, please the man, forgive him 900 times, ignore the signals. The man is always right. It's your job to make him happy. And that's how my marriage was, right? I mean, I asked for divorce, I think April 2020, and it took me till February to file, 2 years later to file for it, because he would say, I'm sorry, and it's going to get better, and I'm going to be better, and I'm going to be nicer to your kids. And like an idiot, I just kept on letting it happen. So when the divorce started, I realized, wow, as far as I've come in business, I am still Muncie girl in my personal life, and I have to stop that. So dating has become this incredibly beautiful, empowering experience in the sense that I go on these apps for the first time in my life, okay? And I'll give you an example. So I'm on Raya, and you know how on Raya, if you do like Raya Plus, the woman can see if the guy liked her before she
Before.
likes or dislikes, before she does the check or the X. So I'm on Raya and I'm swiping through my feed of who, has been put in front of me. And there's a guy and I see him and I'm like, not for me. And then I look up and I realize that he liked me. And my natural instinct was, oh, well, if he liked me, that means I have to like him back. And I was about to hit yes. And then I stopped myself and I said, no, Julia, his wanting to date you is irrelevant to whether or not you want to date him. It's not that now that he wants to date you, you now have to date him. That's not how it works. You didn't want to go out with him until you saw he liked you. You say no. And when I crossed that X, I felt so strong because I realized this is probably like a very important moment for me that a man said something and I was like, no, thank you. So that was very empowering for me. It sounds dumb, but it was really empowering.
Okay, I just have to say, I'm dating coach butting in here, Julia, because you say it sounds dumb, and you said you were an idiot for not being able to divorce for 6 months, and like
2 years.
for 2 years. Oh my gosh, you said you're an idiot for not being able to divorce for 2 years, and what I hear is that, like you said, there's some of that old programming that's still present. That's not your voice even saying that. That's right?
But that's the thing. I thought I had eradicated that conditioning. I thought I had eradicated all of that brainwashing. And I fooled myself into saying I had eradicated it. But this taught me that as much as I had eradicated in business, I hadn't in my personal life. And this past
Yes.
year of dating, I catch myself.
Yeah.
But now at least I catch myself and I say, no, thank you.
Yeah. And it feels empowering,
It
right?
feels good.
Yes. Yes. To be able to really know what your standard is and to be able to hold to that. And, even though folks listening may not have been through the exact situation, I think we all have some of that old programming. And yeah, we all have it. And I really feel like you break through that stuff, you get to the transformation through action. We could talk about it. You're doing it in business and you're talking about it on the show but when you actually take that action to say, "No, I'm not going to stand for that. No, I'm not going to make excuses for that. This is what my time is worth." And as a human.
This is actually Jeff Jenkins, my producer, told me this philosophy once, and I think he's 100% right. So I want to give him the credit. He said, Julia, people are divided between gardeners and flowers. Gardeners are the people who take care. They nurture, they feed, they support, they help. Flowers are the give me, give me, give me everything. Give me sun, give me food, give me this. Flowers do not garden. They're flowers, right? So I'm always going to be a gardener. I'm a gardener. I take care of people. That's what I do. I'm the eldest child of 8. My siblings are 10 years. My sibling that's next to me, like the one after me, is 10 years younger than me. And then my youngest brother is younger than my eldest daughter, right? So I raised my 7 siblings. I raised my children. I have 11 human beings that I have raised. I'm a mom. I'm always going to be a gardener. But I have always dated and fallen for flowers. And I'm done falling for flowers. I would like someone who gardens some of the time and
That's
doesn't
what
just
I was
say,
going to
give me,
say.
give me, give me.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think it's situational. Like I feel like in my
Exactly.
marriage, sometimes I'm a gardener. I'm often a gardener, but sometimes I'm a flower. And that's what I love about being, with the right person. They know, right? They know.
That's what I want now. Now I want someone who will let me be a flower once in a while.
Yeah, exactly. Well, everybody can be a flower in their undergarments with your shapewear line with plus body. It really is super comfortable,
Thank
and
you.
it feels like I really felt transformed when I put it on, and my daughter didn't laugh at me. She was like, "You go, mom."
That's the beauty of it, is that you wear it to feel better, but you don't have to be uncomfortable about someone seeing it because it's beautiful. It's sexy.
Yeah, we all deserve to feel beautiful and sexy. And man, I could have a whole other conversation for the fellas about what they can do to support women, but I feel like they can read between the lines here a little bit, and they can certainly pick up a copy of your book, Brazen, or get a look at your Netflix series, My Unorthodox Life. Thank you so much for being here, Julia. It was such a pleasure getting to chat with you.
It was really
Thank you.
fun. I had a great time. Thank you so much. What you do is so fantastic. And I think we all need some support and help in this whole ever evolving dating situation. So, really, thank you for being a voice for people.